Welcome to our stair lighting installation. And again, we're going to start with the ABCDE framework. Naturally, you're not going to think ABCDE, but after some time, that framework is just going to settle in. You're not going to think or say ABCDE. It's just a framework, and I want that to settle in. So the first thing is A. So A is our application, and we know we have to look at indoor use, outdoor use, residential use, commercial use, extended commercial use. But in this particular A, I want you to be aware of the media right away. And that mean when I mean media, I mean, is it a concrete stairs? Is it a steel stairs? Is it a tiled staircase? Is it a laminated flooring staircase? Just be aware because that's really going to impact your C area, which is the control circuitry. But we'll get to there. So be aware of the type of media being used, and that also influences your lighting aesthetics when we get down to the D, design. In the brightness aspect, we always should go to the default lowest brightness. Why? Because we're literally lighting from here to here. It's a short riser, and you want to ensure that it's not too bright. So it creates glare and it makes it hard to see. So let's look at some examples of lighting we used on the space for brightness. So this is a good example of a white light in a staircase that's overly lit. And this was a testing stage. This is a nightclub we did. And you can see when it's overly bright, it's causing a lot of reflection and unneeded light within the space. So you want to ensure that your controls can dim that light down to the right brightness. And you want to be mindful that if you're doing animated staircases, you want to ensure that the animation is not too fast, that it confuses the person on where to step. So you have to consider that safety factor. You want to create just enough illumination so the person could comfortably walk. So this was really cool. We slowed down the animations and it was a very complicated staircase to do. It's all DMX lighting. We had to put a lot of infrastructure in. So we'll tackle that when we get to the C. So now that we've tackled brightness, let's jump into the most technical part of this framework. It's the C, which is the control and circuitry and the concealment. Now, you have to speak with your client naturally and figure out how they want it controlled. And I'm going to start off on the most popular stairs lighting that's happening now. It's that sequential stairs light that you step on one staircase and it starts to trigger on. Now, that works with a specific controller, and that controller can have 10 inputs for 10 stairs, 12, 50, 15, 20, 20, 25, and it has two motion sensors, one at the top of the staircase and one at the bottom of the staircase. When one of the motion sensors gets triggered, it turns on that sequence of light. So the sensor tells the control, turn on staircase 1, turn on staircase 2, turn on staircase 3, turn on staircase 4. If the other motion sensor gets triggered, it goes turn on staircase 25, then 24, then staircase 23, then 22. So you get the gist. So let me show you what that wiring would look like. So you have your motion sensor at the top of the stairs. You have your motion sensor to the lower part of the stairs. You're going to have to put a home run wire for every treader. And these wires are usually labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. They're nice tags on it. But I want to show you what the infrastructure of this would look like. These are all going to be home runs in the conduit. So you have your junction box. Your electrical conduit is these lines. You have your electrical junction box, which are these boxes I put here. You have your motion sensors. So all of these stairs have to get a wire running back to the main controller. So that means you have to consider the thickness of your conduit. You have to consider how far your power supply is, because again, it's low voltage. So if the power supply is located really close by, it becomes easy because you could use thinner gauge wires such as 22 gauge, 20 gauge, 18 gauge. But if your power supply and your main controller is really far away, you're going to have to use thicker wires, and you may have to use multiple conduits to power your stairs lighting with these motion sensor triggers. So what typically happens in stair lighting design or stair lighting electricals is that electricians are unaware of the low voltage system and they tend to bring one power box to the space. What happens is that that power box has to be tied back into a power supply. There isn't enough power drops for the stairs because they're catering for some stairs light on the wall. So you want to really get in early on those projects to prevent a lot of rework. And I could tell you with stairs lighting, if we get in a job where the primary electrician has created just outlets, we've had challenges getting the right wire inside using the existing infrastructure. There's always some sort of cutting and rework that has to get done because these LED linear lights need this wire at the integration level. So if it's on the riser, that wire literally has to come here. If it's on the nose, that wire has to come here. If it's on the lower part of the riser, as I showed you, that wire has to come here. So you want to get in earlier and you want to ensure that the infrastructure is in. Now, if you're using a non-motion sensor LED, there are two ways you could approach it. And the first way is having just a few electrical junction boxes like this, and what you can treat them as is a main distribution box. So you could have a thicker gauge wire coming into that box and then using smaller wires, because it's easier to work with smaller wires from 18 gauge all the way to 22 gauge to get those details into the stairs. Now, bear in mind what your detail finish is. So if it's concrete, you either have to put a conduit in or cut a nice channel so the wire could slide in and out if it's going to be covered with a wooden flooring. If it's totally concrete stairs, you have to put a conduit in. Now, this makes your main wires going back to your power supply minimal. So you could do it like a distribution box, where for each wire from the stairs, go back to that one box and a thicker wire goes back in. You have to use your engineering here to ensure that you don't overload that wire and the rating for that wire, and you also have to manage voltage drop. And we'll address that in the E. Another way you could tackle this is you have the parallel runs, and you could run series from stairs to stairs to stairs. You just have to be mindful of your maximum serial run. So if LEDs are usually 5 meters or 16 feet maximum serial run, I would reduce it to 12 or 4 meters just to cater for the resistance in the wire to ensure that we have a uniform brightness in the stairs installation. If you had to do it that series parallel way, it would look like this. So this is your parallel wire going back to your power supply and then to your switch. This is the low voltage. Well, if I shouldn't say low voltage, it's all low voltage. This is the smaller wire gauge going into this LED at this level. Then the end of this one powers up this one. And you have to do this type of installation if you're doing a DMX installation like those stairs I showed you. That's how the installation has to be. It's going to be like a daisy chain happening. So these installations we've all used in the past. These are all the methods we've used, and we want to introduce you to them so you're familiar if the scenario arises. If you have limited space, you use the parallel and you distribute to the smaller LED. If it's a DMX light you're using, you have to go in series. If it's the motion sensor stairs, you have to do all home runs. You have to get a 30 treader controller that can handle 30 individual inputs, and you have to do 30 home runs to that main controller. And again, concealment, you want to ensure that everything looks clean and presentable to the client. You don't want to see any stray wires hanging around the place. So let's get into the design detail. So finally, what we tend to do sometimes is create fail safes. So if I'm unsure that this wire could get compromised because we couldn't put the right infrastructure in, or the wires are inaccessible for some reason, we tend to put a fail-safe wire. So instead of using a 2-core wire, we tend to use 4-core wires. So if any wire gets compromised, we have 2 more cores to work with. And on the design detail, I'm not going to focus on the color. I'm just really going to focus on the different ways you can install the light. And naturally, if the staircase is dark, you want to use a brighter light or increase the brightness. But I'm going to talk about where these lights get installed. So the most common one we have is the nose installation. And sometimes there are LED profiles with a nose light in it. But the nose detail typically involves the LED being installed under the extended part of a staircase. So it gets hidden away like this. And then sometimes there's a little return like this to hide the detail of the light. And that's how the typical stairs lights are done. Let's look at a few examples. You can see the wood that's routed, and within that wooden detail, there is that light facing down into the treader. And it's your most typical stair lighting installation you would see. This could also be done in concrete. So that's a wooden stairs. Let me show you a concrete installation, and this has to be casted in to the concrete. And to do that with the profile, they put conduits in place, they pull the wires through, or they put a drag line to pull the wires through it after, and they casted the profile into the concrete by using little crabs or little supports that will hold into the concrete. And you can see that on this project. So it's a beautiful detail, and these are the profiles where the wood was routed and the profiles were rebaited into it. This is concrete that casted in the profiles and all the wiring infrastructure. And you can see it here like this. Now there's a riser installation. And what does the riser installation look like? This is an example of those motion sensor stairs I spoke about. So you can see it's being triggered and someone is walking and it's coming on sequentially. And there's a little timer you could do to adjust it. They're colored triggered sensors also, not just monochromatic or single color. Just to be clear with everyone, this is your treader, this is your riser, and the bottom of the staircase, that main structure holding up the stairs, that pitch, the angle, that's your stringer that's going up. In your riser, we've done a lower riser like this with tile. So there's a special profile we used where there's a little flange that locks and holds the tile into place, and it's inserted when you're tiling. And this is what it looks like on the lower level like this. It gives a beautiful effect. This is an example here of a combination method. So we're using multiple installation methods to give an indirect light. So let's get a detail of that so you can see. So this stairs here, if you take a look at it, it's a cavity that the joiner or the woodworker did, the joiner or the carpenter did. And we actually have the light downward in the riser in this cavity, and it's creating an indirect light effect by scooping the light out and throwing it onto the treader below. So that's a combination method. And I should clarify my notes. I had nose installation, so let me show you what a nose installation looks like with the profile. So the LED light is really illuminating the nose of the stairs treader, and these tend to come in profiles that look like this. And you can see it's well supported because it's hanging over. There's a brace right here, but the nose are lit. The treader installation is like this. So the nose installation is like this, and the nose installations are typically put on the edge of the treader and the riser, and it's meant to act as an indicator light. This is the example of where the light is placed and how it's supported, usually in an aluminum profile or aluminum extrusion designed to hold the light. This is what a typical treader installation looks like. The light goes below the treader. So lights on the riser could actually go at the lower level like I showed you in the example, or it could be placed in the middle like this, or it could be used as a combination design where we use multiple installation methods to get it. So even though it's on the riser and it's not direct, we can make it an indirect light. So in the design detail, and I spoke about the media, let's consider a few points. If it's wooden, it allows indirect or direct, and I showed you an example of two indirect stairs. One was the wooden on the riser, and the other indirect is where you put the wood, you recess the light, and it hits the riser of the stairs. You can wire the wooden pathways by routing the wood, and it creates these wiring pathways to get all the intricate wire into the stairs. Then there's tile. I showed you the light here where you can put a profile and tile it, very similar to the nose lighting design detail.